What's the worst thing your mom forced you to do? I was 17 when my mom shoved me on my bed, locked the door behind her, and told me, "You're going to keep your mouth shut about this. I know you saw me at the Marriott with Martin." I tried to deny it, but she cut me off. "If you tell your father, I'll make sure everyone knows about the register money." My stomach dropped. "That was $20 for gas, Mom. I paid it back the next day." She smiled. "Who's going to believe that? I have the security footage. You'll lose your scholarship. No college will accept a thief." I stared at her. "You're blackmailing me?" She grabbed my shoulders. "Your siblings will lose their school if we divorce. The house will be gone. This is your fault for following me. Now we both stay quiet." She turned me into her alibi system. Every Thursday was book club, but she was with Martin. When Dad called, I had to say she was at the gym. She deleted family events to make time for him, made me cover when she missed my brother's soccer games. "Tell him I have a migraine." Then she started bringing Martin around as her business consultant, helping with her resume. Dad would shake his hand, grateful. So generous of Martin to help out. Mom would squeeze my shoulder while I wanted to scream. Dad planned a surprise 20th anniversary party, asked me to help coordinate. He booked her favorite restaurant, invited 70 people. When Mom found out, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You should have warned me. Cancel it." I told her I couldn't. "Then I'll tell him you've been stealing from my purse too." 2 weeks later, Dad got laid off. Mom kept spending on hotels with Martin while Dad worried about the mortgage. He took a night job stocking shelves, apologized to Mom for being absent. She texted me from Martin's bed. "Your father's pathetic. Martin knows how to treat a woman." When Dad found a lingerie receipt, Mom blamed me. "Your daughter must have a boyfriend." Dad grounded me for 2 weeks. Mom watched him yell at me, then smirked. "See how easy it is? Stay quiet or it gets worse." She had Dad thinking I was sneaking around with boys while she was destroying our family. The anniversary party came. The restaurant was packed with family, Dad's co-workers, Mom's friends from her fake book club. Dad stood up with champagne, tapping his glass. 20 years ago, I married my best friend. Through everything, she's been honest and true." Mom stood to respond when Martin walked in. Nobody had invited him. Mom went pale, grabbed my wrist under the table. "Why is he here?" "I didn't invite him," I whispered. "Fix this or I'll destroy you right now," she hissed. Dad looked confused why Mom seemed upset about her business consultant showing up. Mom stood suddenly. "Before I speak, our daughter has something to confess." The room turned to me. "She's been stealing from us to support her drug problem." 70 people stared at me. Dad's mouth fell open. That's when I stood up. "Mom's been having an affair with Martin for 2 years. She threatened to ruin my life if I told anyone." The silence was deafening. Martin tried backing toward the door, but Dad's brother moved to block him. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. "I've been recording her threats for months." I hit play. Mom's voice filled the room, clear and cruel, threatening to destroy my future if I exposed her. Her sister gasped from across the room. "Is this why you borrowed $30,000 from me?" Dad's best friend, who worked at his company, stood up. "Martin's been billing us for fake consulting. I have the invoices." My grandmother pushed back her chair. "I knew something was wrong at Christmas when you couldn't look me in the eye." The pieces clicked for Dad. Mom hadn't just cheated. She'd funded it with money from his company. The accountant from Dad's work was already on his phone. "We need to call the police. This is embezzlement." Mom tried lunging for my phone. "She's lying. Check her phone for drugs. She's high right now." 2 uncles had to hold her back while she screamed, "You ungrateful beach, and I gave you everything." I showed Dad's lawyer friend my folder of evidence. Screenshots, bank statements, recordings, everything I'd collected. Mom was dragged out by police minutes later, and that's how I found out about her Plan B. It took over a full year for her to go through it. She was out on probation and couldn't go near, but she still found a way to text me without breaking the law. "Hope it was worth it," she said. "I've just sent your crimes to the college board months ago." I stared at the text, my jaw dropping, as hundreds of emails from all the colleges I've applied for started flooding in. I opened them with shaking hands. I sit frozen at my laptop staring at the flood of emails from colleges, each one a variation of "concerns regarding your application integrity," and my hands won't stop shaking, because this is exactly what she threatened. The subject lines blur together as more notifications ping in, and I realize Mom actually did it. She sent whatever poison she'd been holding over me for months to destroy my future. My phone sits next to the laptop, and I pick it up with trembling fingers, scrolling to Dad's number. He's on break at the warehouse right now, probably eating the sandwich he packed this morning in the dark before his shift started. I press call and listen to it ring 3 times before his tired voice answers. My voice cracks when I try to explain what's happening, the words coming out in a jumbled rush about emails and colleges and Mom's text message. He sounds exhausted, but he cuts through my panic immediately and says he'll call Nolan, his lawyer friend from the party. He tells me not to respond to any emails until we figure this out together, and I can hear machinery beeping in the background as he talks. I promise I won't touch anything, and we hang up, and then I'm just sitting there staring at my laptop screen while more emails keep arriving. Each notification sound feels like a punch to the stomach. I count them obsessively, refreshing my inbox every few seconds to see if more schools have joined the pile. 8 colleges so far. 8 places that were supposed to be my escape route from this mess, all questioning whether I'm worthy of admission. I close the laptop because I can't look at it anymore, but closing it doesn't stop my brain from replaying Mom's text over and over. She planned this. While she was sitting in her probation meetings and pretending to comply with court orders, she was building this bomb to drop on me. I pace around my room for 3 hours, checking my phone constantly for updates from Dad. He finally texts at 4 saying Nolan will call me tonight after he reviews everything, and that I should forward all the emails to both of them right now. I open my laptop again with shaking hands and start forwarding, one by one, watching the list grow in my sent folder. Each forward feels like admitting defeat, like proof that Mom won this round even from probation. By the time I finish, it's almost 5 and my stomach is twisted in knots. I hear Dad's car pull into the driveway at 7 in the morning, earlier than usual for his overnight shift to end. He still has his work vest on when he walks through the door, his face gray with exhaustion and worry. We sit at the kitchen table with my laptop between us and forward everything to Nolan along with the background about Mom's threats and the recordings I saved on my phone. I have to explain about the recordings again, about how I started documenting everything after the first few months of her blackmail, because some part of me knew I'd need proof eventually. Dad listens without interrupting. His jaw clenched tight, and I can see him processing how badly he missed what was happening under his own roof. Nolan responds within an hour, even though it's barely 8 in the morning, and his email is calm and methodical in a way that makes me feel slightly less like I'm drowning. He says this might violate Mom's probation, and we need to document everything carefully without direct contact. He lists out specific steps in numbered points, things like screenshotting everything, saving all correspondence, and absolutely no responding to Mom's text or any attempts at contact. Dad reads the email twice, then looks at me across the table and says, "We're going to fight this, that Mom doesn't get to destroy my future after what she already did to our family." I nod, but I can't quite believe him yet because right now it feels like she's winning. I go back to my laptop after Dad heads upstairs to sleep, and that's when I see the email from my top choice scholarship program. My hands freeze over the keyboard as I read the subject line twice to make sure I'm seeing it right. They're putting my award on hold pending a thorough review of character concerns brought to their attention by a concerned party. $15,000 a year just vanished because Mom decided to burn my life down from probation. I have to grip the kitchen counter to stay standing because my legs suddenly don't feel solid enough to hold me up. The email is professionally worded and carefully neutral, but I can read between the lines. Someone sent them something bad enough that they're questioning whether I deserve their money, whether I'm the kind of student they want representing their program. I read it 3 more times looking for any hint of what exactly they received, but it just says, "Concerns regarding conduct and integrity," without specifics. I forward it to Nolan and Dad with shaking hands, then sit back down at the table and put my head in my arms. This scholarship was supposed to make everything possible. Without it, even if I get into my top school, I can't afford to go. Mom knew exactly where to aim to cause maximum damage. The weekend drags by in a horrible fog, where I can't focus on anything except refreshing my email and waiting for more bad news. Danny asks me twice if I'm okay, and I lie both times, telling him I'm just stressed about finals. Rita wants to play a board game on Saturday afternoon, and I sit through it mechanically, moving pieces without really seeing the board. Dad works his overnight shift Saturday night, and comes home Sunday morning looking even more exhausted, but he sits with me at the kitchen table again to go through Nolan's latest email. Nolan wants copies of everything I have documenting Mom's threats, a timeline of events and contact information for anyone who witnessed her behavior. He's building a case to take to her probation officer, and reading his clinical legal language makes this all feel simultaneously more real and more surreal. Monday morning, my guidance counselor, Miss A. Ray, calls me into her office first thing, before first period even starts. Her face is serious but kind as she gestures for me to sit down, and there's a printout of an email sitting on her desk between us. She asks me to explain what's going on, and I realize with a sinking feeling that Mom didn't just target colleges. She went after my high school reputation, too. Mr. Ray slides the printout across the desk and I scan it quickly, my stomach dropping further with each line. It's addressed to the principal and copied to Miss Ray, from an anonymous sender, outlining concerns about my character and behavior. It references the gas station incident, claims there have been multiple instances of concerning behavior, suggests the school should reconsider my college recommendations. I look up at Miss Ray and her expression is patient, waiting for my side of the story. I pull out my phone with shaking hands and start from the beginning, from the day Mom cornered me about seeing her at the Marriott. Miss Ray listens to the whole story without interrupting, and when I offer to play parts of the recordings, she nods, and I hit play on one of the clearest threats. Mom's voice fills the small office, cold and calculating as she explains exactly how she'll destroy my scholarship chances if I don't keep covering for her. Miss Ray's face tightens as she listens, and when the recording ends, she sits back in her chair and is quiet for a long moment, Then she pulls out a legal pad and starts outlining appeal processes for each college, her handwriting quick and neat as she fills the page. She tells me she's dealt with parental sabotage cases before, that she knows exactly which documentation will carry weight with admissions committees versus what sounds like excuses. She asks pointed questions about dates, about who else witnessed Mom's behavior, about what physical evidence exists beyond the recordings. I answer everything as specifically as I can, pulling up my phone to check dates when I'm not sure. Miss Ray writes it all down, creating a framework for how we're going to fight this. She says we need to be strategic, that we can't just throw everything at the colleges and hope something sticks. We need a clear narrative with supporting evidence that demonstrates a pattern of coercion, not just my word against Mom's. By the time the bell rings for second period, I have 3 pages of notes from her legal pad and a plan that feels almost manageable. Miss Ray writes me a pass for being late to class and tells me to come back tomorrow during study hall so we can start drafting appeal letters. I leave her office feeling slightly less alone in this fight, like maybe I have adults on my side who actually know what they're doing. The worst part comes during lunch when Miss Ray calls me back to her office to show me what the colleges actually received. She managed to get copies through some administrative channel I don't fully understand, and she spreads them out on her desk for me to see. An anonymous packet with the security footage of me taking $20 from the register. The video edited to cut off before I wrote the IOU and before I came back the next morning. Claims I've been caught with drugs multiple times at the school, complete with fabricated dates and locations. Allegations that my emotional instability makes me unsuitable for campus life, citing incidents that never happened. Mom took one mistake I immediately fixed and wrapped it in complete lies, and now 8 schools think I'm a thief and an addict. I stare at the pages spread across Miss Ray's desk and feel something cold and hard settle in my chest. This isn't just sabotage, it's systematic destruction. Mom didn't just report the gas station incident, she built an entire false narrative around it with enough specific details to sound credible. Mr. Ray points out the inconsistencies in the drug allegations, dates when I was provably somewhere else, claims about incidents that never appeared in any school records. She says this actually works in our favor because the lies are so specific they can be disproven, but I can barely hear her over the rushing sound in my ears. I keep thinking about how much time and planning this took, how Mom must have been sitting at her computer carefully crafting each lie while I thought the worst was over. Missy Ray makes copies of everything for Nolan and puts the originals in a folder labeled with my name. She tells me not to panic, that we have strong evidence to counter all of this, but panic is exactly what I feel walking back to class with those pages in my backpack. After school, I meet with Nolan at his office downtown, a small suite in a building near the courthouse where Mom's case was heard. He's in his 40s with graying hair and the kind of calm competence that makes me feel slightly less like I'm drowning. He reviews everything I brought, the emails, the anonymous packet, Missy Ray's notes, and my phone with all the recordings. Then he explains his strategy in clear, simple terms. He advises strict documentation of every contact attempt and controlled disclosure to institutions. We tell the truth with evidence, but don't overshare or get emotional in official communications. He's already drafting a letter to Mom's probation officer about indirect harassment through third-party reports, and he shows me the outline on his computer. The letter is clinical and factual, listing each instance of contact with dates and evidence, building a case that Mom is violating the spirit of her probation, even if she's technically not making direct contact. Nolan says the probation officer will take this seriously because it demonstrates continued targeting of a minor, which was part of what she was originally charged with. He asks me detailed questions about the timeline, about when I first started noticing Mom's affair, when the threats began, how often she forced me to lie. I answer everything as precisely as I can, and he types notes rapidly on his laptop. By the time we finish, it's almost 6, and I'm exhausted from reliving everything, but Nolan seems energized by having a clear case to build. He walks me out to where Dad is waiting in the parking lot and tells him this is very actionable, that we have strong grounds for both the probation violation and the college appeals. Dad shakes his hand and thanks him, and I can see some of the tension leave his shoulders. That evening, I spend building a detailed timeline in a spreadsheet, something Missy Ray said would be crucial for the college appeals. Every threat Mom made with dates, every time she forced me to lie with specifics, every piece of evidence I collected. I organize it chronologically starting from the day I saw her at the Marriott, creating columns for date, incident, evidence, and witnesses. Missy Ray said colleges need to see a clear pattern of coercion, not just my word against Mom's, and watching 2 years of abuse turn into data points makes me feel sick and relieved at the same time. Each row in the spreadsheet represents a moment when Mom had power over me, when I was too scared to fight back. But seeing it all laid out like this, I can see what Missy Ray and Nolan see, a systematic pattern of manipulation and control that went on for years. I work on the spreadsheet until my eyes blur, adding every detail I can remember. By the time I finish, it's after 11, and I have 47 entries spanning 2 years. 47 times I can document with specifics, and probably dozens more I've forgotten or couldn't prove. I save the file in 3 different places and email it to myself for backup, then finally close my laptop. Dad comes into my room near midnight and sits on the edge of my bed without saying anything at first. I'm still awake, staring at the ceiling and replaying everything in my head. Then he starts talking, his voice quiet and rough. For the first time since the party, he actually apologizes for grounding me over the lingerie receipt, for believing Mom when she blamed me. His voice breaks when he says he should have trusted me, should have seen what she was doing. I sit up and end up comforting him, even though I'm the one whose future just exploded, telling him it's okay, that Mom was good at hiding things. But it's not really okay, and we both know it. He stayed with her for months after finding that receipt, working his overnight shift and apologizing to her for being absent, while she was destroying our family from the inside. He puts his arm around my shoulders, and we sit there in the dark, and I realize we're both trying to figure out how to live with what we didn't see until it was too late. A shadow moves in my doorway, and I jump before realizing it's Danny standing there in his pajamas. He looks at me with this expression I've never seen on his face before, older somehow, and asks if Mom is why I've been acting so weird for 2 years. My stomach drops because I thought he was asleep, thought he didn't hear any of that conversation with Dad, but he's 13, and apparently he's been paying attention to everything. I nod slowly and watch his face change as pieces click into place for him. All the times I covered for Mom's absences, all the tension at dinner, all the lies I told about where she was, it suddenly makes sense to him, and I can see it happening in real time. He sits down on the floor next to my bed without saying anything else, and we stay like that for a while, both of us processing what this means. He finally asks if that's why I always looked sick when Mom asked me to lie to Dad, and I tell him yes, and he gets this hard look in his eyes that reminds me of Curtis at the anniversary party. He says he knew something was wrong but thought it was normal family stuff, not this, and I realize he's been carrying his own confusion about our family for years without anyone explaining it to him. My phone buzzes on my nightstand, and I glance at it to see the family group chat lighting up with notifications. Curtis posted a screenshot of one of the college emails with a message asking what Mom sent to the schools, and the chat explodes within seconds. Mom's sister types that Mom has been through enough, and we need to stop attacking her, while Dad's brother fires back asking if she's serious right now. Autumn jumps in demanding to know exactly what Mom told the colleges, and then Mom's parents start defending her saying, this is family business that shouldn't involve schools. I watch the messages flood in faster than I can read them. Relatives I haven't talked to in months suddenly taking sides, and the family is splitting apart right in front of me over whether I deserved this for exposing the affair at the party. Someone suggests I should have kept quiet for the sake of family unity, and Curtis responds with a string of angry messages about enabling abuse. Rita's godmother, who's Mom's best friend from college, leaves the chat entirely with a message about not wanting to be involved in this drama. Danny leans over to look at my phone and watches the fight unfold, and he asks quietly if this is what it's been like since the party. I tell him this is actually worse than usual because now extended family has to pick sides publicly instead of just having opinions privately. The chat keeps going, accusations flying back and forth, and I turn my phone face down because watching my family destroy itself over my future is too much to handle right now. The next morning, Nolan calls before I'm even fully awake and says he got me a copy of the actual security footage Mom used in her reports to the colleges. He emails it over, and I open the file on my laptop with shaking hands, already knowing what I'm going to see but needing to confirm it anyway. The footage shows me reaching into the register and taking a $20 bill, and the timestamp shows it's from 2 years ago when I borrowed money for gas. But the video cuts off right there, right after I take the money, before the part where I wrote an IOU note and stuck it in the register. Nolan sends a second file showing the full unedited footage from the gas station's backup system, and I watch myself write the note, watch myself come back the next morning before my shift, and replace the 20 with my own money from babysitting. The timestamps prove Mom deliberately edited the footage to make me look like a thief, cutting it at the exact moment that would be most damaging and removing all evidence that I fixed it immediately. I feel this cold anger settle in my chest, different from the hot panic I felt reading the college emails, because this means she planned this sabotage for months. She kept that edited footage waiting, kept it as insurance or revenge, and the moment I exposed her at the party, she started building her case to destroy my future. Nolan explains on the phone that this kind of deliberate evidence tampering will help with the probation violation case and with the college appeals. But all I can think about is how Mom sat on this for 2 years, watching me stress about college applications, watching me work towards scholarships, all while holding this weapon she planned to use against me. I find Deacon Palmer's number in my old work contacts and call him, my voice shaking so badly I have to repeat myself twice before he understands what I'm asking about. He remembers the incident immediately, says he pulled me aside that day to make sure everything was okay at home because good kids don't usually need to borrow register money. He pulls up the records while I'm still on the phone and confirms I repaid the $20 within 18 hours, that I left a note, that I never did anything like it before or after. Then he says something that makes my throat tight, that what my mom did is messed up beyond belief, and he'll write a statement for the colleges without me even having to ask. He tells me to have Nolan contact him directly for an official affidavit, that he keeps detailed employment records and can prove I was a trustworthy employee who made one mistake under obvious stress and immediately corrected it. I thank him about 5 times before hanging up, and it's the first moment since the email started that I feel like maybe someone will actually believe my side of things. Dad overhears the call from the kitchen and comes to check on me, and when I explain what Deacon offered to do, his whole face changes. He asks why I never told him about borrowing the money, and I remind him that Mom threatened to make it sound worse if I said anything, that she'd already turned the lingerie receipt into a reason to ground me. He looks like he wants to punch something, but instead he pulls out his phone and texts Nolan to coordinate getting Deacon's statement as soon as possible. Miss Ray calls me into her office during lunch period, and she's already printed out a template for college appeals. She's organized it into sections that acknowledge the footage, explain the immediate restitution with documentation, describe the pattern of coercion with the recordings as evidence, and include character references from teachers and employers. She makes me sit down and read the whole thing out loud to her, and I barely get through the first paragraph before my voice cracks. She stops me and makes me start over, saying the colleges need to see strength and accountability, not just victimhood, and that means I have to be able to present my case without falling apart. We practice for the entire lunch period, her correcting my tone when I sound too defensive or too apologetic, until I can read through the whole appeal without crying. She explains that each college will need a customized version referencing their specific concerns, but this template gives me the structure to work from. By the time the bell rings, I have 7 copies printed out, 1 for each remaining school, and a clear plan for what documentation to attach to each one. Missy Ray also makes me promise to let her review each appeal before I send it, because she says one wrong word could tank my chances, and we can't afford any mistakes. 3 days later, the first college responds, and instead of a rejection, they offer a video hearing where I can present my case to their admissions committee. The email says I have 1 week to prepare and lists the committee members who will be attending, and the thought of defending myself on camera to 5 strangers makes me want to throw up. I forward the email to Nolan immediately, and he calls back within an hour saying this is actually good news, that they're willing to listen instead of just rejecting me outright based on Mom's report. He starts asking me questions about what I'll say, how I'll present the evidence, and I realize I have no idea how to do this without sounding like I'm making excuses or blaming everything on Mom. We schedule a preparation session for that weekend, and Nolan tells me to bring all my documentation organized in the order I'll reference it, because the hearing will probably only last 30 minutes and I need to use that time efficiently. I spend the next 2 days obsessively organizing my evidence folder, practicing what I'll say in front of my bathroom mirror, and trying not to panic every time I imagine 5 faces on a screen, judging whether I deserve a future. Nolan shows up Saturday morning with a legal pad covered in notes, and we spend 4 hours in our living room doing practice runs of the video hearing. He scripts out safe boundaries for my testimony, tells me to stick to facts, and reference documentation to describe Mom's actions without calling her names or getting emotional about family drama, and to redirect any questions about the affair back to my academic record and character. Then he pretends to be a hostile committee member and asks me brutal questions about why I didn't report Mom's threats sooner, why I participated in her lies, whether I take responsibility for my own choices. The first few times I try to answer, I either get defensive or start crying, but Nolan makes me keep going until I can respond calmly with facts and evidence references. By the end of the session, I can handle his harsh questions without falling apart, can acknowledge my mistake with the register money, while clearly explaining the coercion context, and can present myself as someone who made difficult choices under impossible circumstances rather than as either a victim or a liar. Dad watches part of the practice session, and afterwards he tells Nolan he doesn't know how to thank him for helping like this. And Nolan just says he's seen what parental manipulation can do to kids' futures, and he's not letting Mom get away with it. I submit a request through Nolan to get certified records from Mom's embezzlement case, the official documents that will prove her pattern of threats and manipulation to the college committee. Nolan explains that the prosecutor's office has to review and approve the request, that it might take a few days, and that I should be prepared for the records to be harsh reading because they'll include detailed witness statements about what happened at the anniversary party. I wait 3 days checking my email constantly before the packet finally arrives as a PDF with an official county seal. I open it on my laptop and spend an hour reading through witness statements from the party, including direct quotes from the recordings that were entered as evidence in Mom's case. Seeing it all laid out in official legal language makes it feel more real and less like a nightmare I imagined. The prosecutor's summary describes Mom's actions as a calculated pattern of coercion and intimidation targeting a minor family member, and that clinical description of what I lived through for 2 years somehow validates that it wasn't normal, wasn't something I should have just handled better. I print 3 copies of the entire packet, 1 for the video hearing, 1 for my records, and 1 to send to the scholarship committee with my appeal. Gibson Ayala, the accountant from Dad's old company, sends an unsolicited letter to Nolan explaining Martin's fraud pattern and how Mom helped conceal it by threatening family members into silence. I didn't even know Nolan had contacted him, but apparently Gibson reached out on his own after hearing about the college situation through Curtis. The letter describes in technical detail how Martin's fake consulting invoices worked, how much money he stole from the company, and how my exposure at the anniversary party actually saved the company from even worse losses because it triggered an immediate audit. Gibson writes that my actions demonstrated integrity under extreme pressure, and that any college would be fortunate to have a student with that kind of moral courage. Nolan explains that this letter from a neutral professional, someone with no family connection who can speak to the business side of Mom's crimes, carries weight that family testimony never could. I add Gibson's letter to my evidence packet and feel slightly less like I'm just a kid begging colleges to believe my word against my mom's. School becomes completely unbearable when rumors start spreading that I'm under investigation for theft and drugs. Kids I've known since elementary school suddenly avoid me in the hallways. Conversations stop when I walk by, and I catch people staring at me during lunch. Someone writes NARC on my locker in permanent marker, and when I report it to the office, they say they'll look into it, but I can tell they don't really care. A girl from my chemistry class asks if it's true I got kicked out of college before even starting, and when I try to explain it's complicated, she just walks away. My former lab partner requests a new partner without explanation, and the teacher approves it without asking me if I'm okay with the change. I realize Mom's poison is working exactly how she intended, destroying my reputation even from probation, turning me into a pariah at the school right when I need support the most. I stop eating in the cafeteria and start spending lunch in Ms. Ray's office, and she doesn't ask why, but she always has her door open for me. The next day, Maggie tracks me down in the hallway between classes and grabs my arm hard enough to make me stop. She looks mad in a way I've never seen before, her face red and her jaw tight. She asks why I never told her about my drug problem, and I just stare at her because what is she even talking about? I try to explain it's all lies, that Mom made everything up to destroy my college applications. But Maggie cuts me off and says her mom got a call from someone claiming to be my concerned aunt. This person told Maggie's mom I was using drugs at the school, stealing to support my habit, and that parents needed to keep their kids away from me for their own safety. My hands go cold as I realize what Mom did. She didn't just send reports to colleges and the school. She's been calling parents directly, spreading poison through the entire parent network, turning my friends against me by making their parents scared. Maggie says her mom won't let her hang out with me anymore, and she just wanted to hear the truth from me before she stops talking to me completely. I try to show her the recordings on my phone, but she backs away like I might hurt her. She says she has to go and walks off fast, leaving me standing there in the middle of the hallway while other kids flow around me like I'm invisible. The anger hits so hard I can't breathe right. I go to the office and tell them I'm sick and need to go home, and they let me leave without asking questions because I probably look as awful as I feel. I can't stand being home alone with my thoughts spinning, so I text Dad during his dinner break and ask if I can come to his shift. He says yes without asking why, just sends me the address of the big store where he works nights. I drive over around 10 and find him in the back warehouse wearing a vest that's too big, unloading boxes from a truck. He's been doing this for 6 months now, this job he's way too smart for, because Mom's affair and the embezzlement scandal got him fired from his real career. I watch him for 8 hours straight, following him around the store as he stocks shelves with cereal and canned soup and laundry soap. His back hurts. I can tell from how he moves, but he doesn't complain. He just keeps working, scanning boxes, stacking products, checking his list. Around 2 in the morning when the store is empty except for us and 2 other workers, I really understand what Mom did to our family. It's not just the betrayal or the lies. It's this. It's watching my dad, who used to manage projects and lead teams, now stocking shelves for minimum wage because she destroyed his reputation. It's the grinding daily cost that doesn't end, the way every single day he has to do work that's beneath him just to keep our house. It's knowing that while he was working this terrible job and apologizing to her for being absent, she was in hotel rooms with Martin spending money we didn't have. I sit on a pallet of paper towels and watch him work, and feel this cold understanding settle in my chest that some damage doesn't heal. It just becomes part of how you live. Mr. Ray calls me into her office the next week and says we need to draft a personal statement I can send with my appeals. She explains that colleges need to see me take responsibility for my choices while also understanding the pressure I was under. We spend 3 hours after school working on the first draft, and it's awful. I sound either like I'm making excuses or like I'm playing the victim. Miss Ray makes me start over. The second draft is too angry, the third is too formal, the fourth doesn't explain enough. By draft 7, I'm crying in her office because I can't figure out how to tell the truth without sounding bitter or weak. She makes me take a break, brings me water, and then we try again. Draft 8 is better but still not right. Draft 9 gets closer. By draft 11, we finally have something that sounds mature and honest instead of self-pitying. It's the hardest thing I've ever written because I have to explain how Mom threatened me without making it sound like I had no choice at all. I have to own that I participated in her lies while also showing why I felt trapped. I have to sound strong enough that colleges will trust me, but vulnerable enough that they understand the pressure was real. Miss Ray reads the final version twice and nods. She says this is good. This shows growth and awareness. This is something admissions officers can work with. I save it to my laptop and send copies to my email and Dad's email and Nolan's email because I'm terrified of losing it. The video hearing happens on a Thursday afternoon in Mrs. Ray's office using her computer. 3 admissions officers appear on screen, 2 women and 1 man, all looking serious and professional. They introduce themselves and explain, "This is my opportunity to address the concerns raised about my application." The man starts asking questions immediately. Why didn't I report Mom's threats sooner? Why did I participate in her lies for 2 years? Whether I take responsibility for my own choices or if I'm blaming everything on my mother. I keep my voice steady even though my hands are shaking under the desk where they can't see. I explain about the scholarship threat, about my siblings' school, about being 17 and scared. One of the women asks what proof I have that the threats were real. I share my screen and play a 30-second clip of Mom's voice, clear and cold, telling me she'll destroy my scholarship if I tell Dad about Martin. The room goes completely silent. Nobody speaks for what feels like a full minute. The other woman asks about the register money, and I explain about paying it back the next day, about having Deacon's written statement confirming it. The man asks if I think my actions at the anniversary party were appropriate. I say no, that I wish I'd found a better way, but I was out of options and Mom was about to destroy me in front of everyone anyway. They thank me for my time and say they need to discuss everything before making a decision. The screen goes black and I just sit there staring at Mrs. Ray's desk, feeling like I either saved my future or buried it, and I won't know which for days. 2 days later, the email comes. They're requesting additional proof from the school officials and character references before making a final choice. It's not a rejection, but it's not acceptance either. I'm stuck in this horrible in-between space where my entire future depends on other people deciding if they believe me or if they believe Mom's lies. I forward the email to Nolan and Mrs. Ray and Dad, then close my laptop because I can't look at it anymore. Nolan files papers with Mom's probation officer documenting everything. The college reports, the calls to parents pretending to be a concerned relative, the pattern of harassment through third parties. He emails me that afternoon saying the probation officer called him back within 2 hours. She said this is a serious violation of the no contact order, and they're opening a formal investigation. Nolan says if they find enough evidence, Mom could go back to court for sentencing on her original charges. For the first time since the college emails started flooding in, I feel like maybe the system will actually protect me instead of just watching while Mom destroys my life from a distance. A police officer comes to our house 3 days later to take a statement for possibly expanding the restraining order. She's young, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back tight and a notepad she keeps writing in. I have to walk her through everything. The anniversary party, the 2 years of threats, the recordings I saved, the college reports Mom sent, the calls to parents. I play the recordings for her and watch her face get harder with each one. She keeps shaking her head and making notes. When I finish, she says she's seen parental sabotage cases before but never one this planned out and cruel. She uses those exact words, planned and cruel, and something about hearing a police officer say, it makes it feel real and official instead of just my family's private nightmare. But it also makes me feel more damaged, like I'm officially a victim now in police records and court documents, and I don't know if that validation is worth how broken it makes me feel. The second college on my list sends their decision without offering a hearing. The email is short and formal. They state that regardless of the circumstances around the theft accusation, the security footage shows concerning judgment, and they can't overlook it. My application is denied. I lock myself in the bathroom and cry for 20 minutes, the kind of crying where I can't catch my breath and my face gets hot and swollen. Dad knocks on the door soft and careful. He says through the wood that I still have 6 other schools that haven't decided yet. 6 chances left. I wash my face and open the door, and he hugs me without saying anything else because what else is there to say? Mr. Ray calls me into her office the next week and says we need to have a reality check conversation about contingency planning. She sits across from me with her hands folded on her desk and her face kind but serious. She says that even if some colleges accept me, the scholarship situation might not get fixed in time for fall semester. She suggests I should consider community college with a transfer plan as a backup option. Make sure I have somewhere to go no matter what happens with the appeals. I hate her for saying it even though I know she's trying to help. Community college feels like giving up, like admitting Mom won. Mr. Ray says it's not about giving up, it's about being smart and having options. I nod and say I'll think about it, but inside I'm screaming. The next day I come back to her office and I'm so angry I can barely keep my voice level. I tell her I didn't survive 2 years of blackmail and expose my entire family's trauma at a restaurant in front of 70 people just to end up at community college. I didn't record my mother threatening me and didn't cooperate with police and didn't go through all of this just to let her win anyway. Mr. Ray lets me vent, just sitting there calm while I pace her office. When I finally stop talking, she's quiet for a minute. Then she says my pride sounds a lot like Mom's and maybe I need to separate my worth from other people's approval. She says community college isn't failure. It's a path forward, and refusing to consider it because of what it means to my ego is exactly the kind of thinking that got Mom in trouble. Her words hit me like she slapped my face. I leave her office shaking with anger and this horrible feeling in my stomach that she might be right. That maybe I'm more like Mom than I want to admit. That maybe my pride matters more to me than my actual future. I walk to my car and sit in the parking lot for 30 minutes trying to breathe through the panic of not knowing who I am anymore. I walk past my room and Dad's waiting in the doorway with his arms crossed, and before I can make an excuse, he says we need to talk about getting me some help. I freeze because therapy sounds like admitting I can't handle this on my own, like saying out loud that Mom broke something in me that won't fix itself. He follows me into my room and sits on the edge of my bed, rubbing his face the way he does when he's exhausted. He tells me he's already seeing someone to deal with his guilt about believing her lies for so long, about grounding me over that receipt, about missing all the signs. His voice cracks when he says, maybe we could both use someone neutral to talk to about the wreckage, someone who isn't drowning in it like we are. I want to argue, but the words stick in my throat because part of me knows he's right, knows I'm spiraling and can't seem to stop. I agree, but only because he looks so hopeful, so desperate to do something right after getting everything wrong. The therapist's office smells like lavender and has those generic watercolor paintings of beaches on the walls. Dr. Bray is maybe 50 with gray streaks in her black hair, and she doesn't smile too much or try to make small talk, just gestures for us to sit and asks where we want to start. Dad looks at me, and I look at the floor, and neither of us knows how to begin explaining the mess our family became. She waits without pushing, and the silence stretches until Dad clears his throat and says his wife blackmailed their daughter for 2 years to hide an affair. The words sound insane coming out of his mouth like something from a bad movie. But Dr. Bray just nods and asks him to continue. He walks through the whole story while I sit there picking at my cuticles until they bleed, and she takes notes without interrupting even when he gets to the part about the anniversary party and Mom getting arrested. When he finishes, she turns to me and asks if there's anything I want to add. I pull out my phone with shaking hands and play one of the recordings, Mom's voice filling the small office, threatening to destroy my scholarship and blame me for stealing from her purse. Dr. Bray listens to the whole thing, and when it ends, she sets down her pen and looks directly at me. She says what Mom did has a name, that it's called coercive control, and hearing those clinical words makes it feel real in a way it hasn't before. She explains that my guilt about the family consequences isn't an accurate assessment of responsibility, that the person who causes harm is responsible for that harm, not the person who exposes it. I want to believe her, but 2 years of Mom's voice in my head makes it hard to accept that telling the truth wasn't the thing that destroyed us. Dr. Bray says we'll work on separating what I actually did wrong from what Mom convinced me I did wrong, and Dad reaches over and squeezes my hand so hard it hurts. My second session is just me and Dr. Bray, and she starts by asking how I'm feeling about Mom now that some time has passed. I tell her the truth, that sometimes I still feel protective of her even though I hate myself for it, that I catch myself making excuses for why she did what she did. She nods like she expected this and pulls out a diagram about something called trauma bonds. She explains that 2 years of threats created patterns in my brain that won't disappear overnight, that my nervous system learned to associate Mom's approval with safety and her anger with danger. The protective feelings aren't weakness or stupidity, they're my brain trying to survive a situation where the person who was supposed to protect me became the threat. She gives me homework to practice recognizing when I'm responding from fear versus actual values, to notice the difference between I should protect Mom because she's my mother, and I'm afraid of what happens if I don't protect her. It sounds simple, but when I try it at home, I realize how often fear drives my choices, how many times a day I still operate like Mom's watching and judging. Dr. Bray says this is normal, that undoing 2 years of conditioning takes time and patience, and I shouldn't expect myself to be healed just because Mom's not physically present anymore. I leave feeling both better and worse, like at least now I understand why I'm so messed up, but also realizing how much work it's going to take to get better. Autumn calls on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm trying to focus on calculus homework. Her voice sounds tired but determined when she says she wants to help with the college situation. I put down my pencil and ask what she means. She tells me she's been thinking about the $30,000 she lent Mom, how Mom claimed it was for family medical expenses, but actually used it for hotels with Martin and legal fees. She says she's willing to write an official statement about Mom's pattern of lying and manipulation if it would help my appeals. My throat gets tight because Autumn is Mom's mother, and choosing to support me means publicly admitting her daughter is exactly as bad as everyone says. I ask if she's sure because this will make things worse with Mom's side of the family. Autumn laughs, but it sounds bitter. She says she's already lost her daughter to whatever darkness makes someone hurt their own child, and she's not going to lose her granddaughter too by staying silent. She asks me to have Nolan contact her about the affidavit process. I thank her 3 times before hanging up, and then I sit there staring at my phone trying to process that someone from Mom's own family believes me enough to go on record. The family group chat explodes within an hour of Autumn posting that she's supporting my college appeals. Mom's sister types in all caps demanding to know how Autumn can betray family loyalty by airing private business to strangers. Curtis responds that protecting an abuser isn't loyalty, it's enabling, and suddenly 30 people are arguing about whether truth or privacy matters more. Dad's side keeps posting about accountability and doing the right thing. Mom's side keeps talking about forgiveness and moving on and not destroying Mom's life further. My phone buzzes constantly with notifications, and I watch my extended family split down the middle in real time. Cousins taking sides and aunts blocking each other. Someone posts a Bible verse about forgiveness. Someone else posts statistics about family abuse. My uncle shares a meme about toxic family members, and 3 people leave the chat immediately. I mute the notifications but keep reading because I can't look away from the wreckage, from watching people who used to sit together at Thanksgiving now calling each other names and threatening to never speak again. Rita texts me privately, asking if this is her fault, and I have to reassure my 10-year-old sister that adults destroying their relationships over their own choices has nothing to do with her. The news about Martin's plea deal breaks on a Thursday morning. 3 years probation, full restitution to Dad's company, 200 hours of community service. Nolan forwards me the link to the local paper's article, and I read it during lunch in my car. The headline says, "Local man pleads guilty to embezzlement scheme," and includes our last name in the second paragraph because Martin specifically defrauded Dad. Seeing our family business in print makes my stomach turn. The article mentions the anniversary party exposure without naming me directly, but everyone in town knows the story by now. I feel exposed and vindicated at the same time, like finally there's official confirmation that I wasn't lying or exaggerating, but also like our private nightmare is now public entertainment. Kids at the school will definitely see this. Teachers will read it. College admissions officers might find it if they search our name. I sit in the parking lot for 20 minutes after the bell rings trying to decide if this helps or hurts my case. I make the mistake of scrolling to the comment section on the article. Someone with a cartoon profile picture says our family is clearly dysfunctional, and the daughter probably learned manipulation from the mother. Another person argues I was brave to expose the truth. A third suggests I'm just as bad as Mom for using public humiliation tactics instead of handling it privately. Someone asks why I didn't just tell my dad quietly. Someone else points out that I tried staying quiet for 2 years, and it only got worse. The debate goes on for 60 comments, and I read every single one even though my hands start shaking. People I've never met have opinions about my trauma, about whether I'm a victim or a villain or both. They speculate about our family dynamics and make assumptions about my character based on one newspaper article. I finally close my laptop when someone suggests I exposed Mom at the party for attention and revenge, not justice. Dr. Abray's voice in my head reminds me that strangers' opinions don't define my truth, but it's hard to remember that when 30 people are debating whether I'm a good person. Ms. Abray calls me into her office with news that the scholarship committee wants a phone interview. She hands me a printed email with the date and time, tells me I have 2 days to prepare. The email uses phrases like, "discuss the allegations," and "hear your response," and my chest gets tight reading it. Nolan comes to the house that night, and we spend 3 hours organizing my documentation into a clear narrative. He makes me practice explaining the gas station incident, the immediate restitution, the timeline of Mom's threats, the evidence of retaliation. Mr. Ray joins us the second evening and role-plays being a skeptical committee member, asking harsh questions about why I participated in Mom's lies and whether I take responsibility for my choices. By the end, I can walk through the whole story without crying, hitting the key points Nolan identified as most important. We create a folder with everything organized by topic, so I can reference it quickly during the call. Deacon's statement about the repayment, the recordings of Mom's threats, the court records from her embezzlement case. The timeline showing her reports to colleges came immediately after her probation started. Nolan reminds me to stick to facts and avoid sounding defensive or emotional, to let the evidence speak for itself. I practice until my voice sounds steady and confident, even though inside I'm terrified they'll decide Mom's version is more believable than mine. The scholarship interview lasts 45 minutes and I'm sweating by the end of it. The committee chair introduces 3 other people on the call, and I can hear papers rustling in the background. They ask me to walk through what happened with the register money, and I explain the $20 for gas, the IOU I wrote, the repayment the next morning. They ask why I didn't report Mom's threats immediately, and I tell them about her leverage with the security footage, about believing her when she said no one would accept me as a thief. One committee member asks pointed questions about my judgment in participating in Mom's lies for 2 years. I take a breath and reference the recordings, offer to play them demonstrating the pattern of coercion. They decline but ask me to email the files after the call. Another member asks about the drug allegations, and I explain that Mom made those up as retaliation, that I've never been suspended or disciplined at the school. I mention the formal letter Miss. Ray is preparing to verify my conduct record. The chair asks about my academic performance, and I tell her my GPA stayed above 3.7 throughout everything. They thank me for my time and say they need to verify my conduct record with the school before making any decisions. The call ends and I sit there staring at my phone, back to waiting while strangers decide if I deserve a future or if Mom's poison worked well enough to destroy it. Missy Ray gets contacted by the scholarship committee and 4 of the remaining colleges within 2 days, all requesting the same thing. Official verification that I have no disciplinary record at the school. She works with the principal to draft a formal letter confirming I've never been suspended, never been cited for drugs, never had any behavioral issues on file. She tells me later that she made sure to include a paragraph noting my academic performance stayed strong despite extraordinary family circumstances, and that she emphasized my involvement in tutoring younger students and maintaining honor roll status. The letter goes out certified mail to all 5 institutions, and then it's more waiting. I check my email obsessively, refresh my phone every 10 minutes, jump whenever a notification comes through. Dad tells me to distract myself with homework or friends, but I can't focus on anything else. My entire future depends on whether these institutions believe their documentation and my evidence over Mom's carefully crafted lies. 3 days pass with no response, and I start imagining worst-case scenarios, community college and student loans, and Mom winning after all. Dr. Bray reminds me that catastrophizing won't change the outcome, but it's hard to stop my brain from spiraling when everything I've worked for hangs in the balance. The next morning, I sit at my desk with 6 separate emails ready to send. Each one has the same attachments but customized opening paragraphs for the different schools. Nolan comes over after work to review everything one more time. He reads through my personal statement twice, checks that all the recordings are properly labeled, makes sure Deacon's letter and the school verification are included in every packet. He nods slowly and tells me it looks professional and complete. I hover my finger over the send button for each email, and my stomach twists because once these go out, there's nothing left to do but wait. Strangers I've never met will read about the worst parts of my life and decide if I deserve a future. I hit send on all 6 within 2 minutes of each other, and then close my laptop before I can second-guess myself. Nolan squeezes my shoulder and says I did everything I could, and now it's out of my hands. That night I try to distract myself with homework, but I keep refreshing my email every few minutes even though I know responses won't come for days or weeks. The panic attack hits at 2 in the morning when I wake up from a nightmare about Mom standing in front of a college admissions board, showing them the security footage on repeat. My chest gets tight and I can't pull in a full breath. My hands start shaking and my brain spirals into this loop of thoughts about how I ruined everything by speaking up at that party. Maybe Mom was right, and I should have just stayed quiet and protected the family. Maybe I destroyed Dad's marriage and Danny and Rita's stability for nothing. I grab my phone to text Dr. Bray, but then remember the grounding technique she taught me. I force myself to name 5 things I can see in my dark bedroom. The lamp on my nightstand, my backpack hanging on the door, the poster of the solar system on my wall, my shoes by the closet, the alarm clock showing 2:17 in the morning. My breathing starts to slow down a little. I keep going with 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, working through the whole sequence until my chest loosens and I can breathe normally again. I lie there staring at the ceiling and realize this is what healing actually looks like. It's not the fear going away completely. It's learning how to survive it when it shows up. Dad comes home from his warehouse shift the next afternoon looking different somehow. He's smiling when he walks in the door instead of dragging himself to the couch like usual. He drops his work bag and tells me he got called for a second interview at a company in his actual field. It's a day job with decent pay and normal hours and benefits. Real benefits, not the bare minimum the warehouse offers. If he gets it, he can finally drop the overnight stocking work that's been grinding him down for months. I watch hope come back into his face for the first time since the anniversary party, and it hits me that we're all slowly climbing out of the hole Mom dug for us. It's not fast and it's not easy, but we're moving up instead of just surviving at the bottom. Dad makes coffee and sits at the kitchen table going over the job details. He talks about the commute and the responsibilities and the salary like he's already imagining a life that doesn't involve stocking shelves at 3 in the morning. Rita comes home from the school and climbs into his lap, even though she's getting too big for it. Danny hovers in the doorway listening, and I can see him doing math in his head about whether this means his soccer league fees won't be a problem anymore. The email from the 3rd college arrives 4 days after I sent the appeals packet. My hands shake opening it because the subject line just says, "Application status update," with no hint of good or bad news. I scan through the formal language about their careful review and consideration of all materials. Then I see the word acceptance, and my eyes blur with tears before I even finish reading. It's conditional acceptance pending completion of an ethics workshop and maintaining clean conduct through graduation. It's not the excited welcome letter I dreamed about with scholarship offers and campus tour invitations. But it's real. It's an actual path forward instead of just closed doors. I have to read it 3 times to make sure I'm understanding correctly. They're giving me a chance. They believe me enough to say yes with conditions instead of just no. I cry sitting at my desk with relief flooding through me so hard I feel dizzy. Then I remember to check the financial aid section, and my stomach drops a little because the numbers aren't great. But it's something. It's more than nothing. I forward the email to Dad and Mizzy, Ray, and Nolan with shaking hands. 2 days later, an official letter arrives from the probation office addressed to Dad with copies to Nolan. I stand in the kitchen while Dad opens it and reads out loud. Mom's probation conditions are being changed to prohibit any third-party contact about our family. No more phone calls from concerned relatives who aren't actually relatives. No more anonymous reports to schools or colleges or anyone else. Nothing. The letter says if she breaks this rule, she goes back to court for sentencing on the original charges that got pleaded down. Nolan calls within an hour of us getting it and explains this is the strongest protection we could hope for without a full restraining order. Mom can't come near us directly because of the existing order. Now she can't use other people to get around it either. I feel something loosen in my chest that's been tight since the emails started flooding in. She can still hate me from wherever she is, but she can't actively destroy my life anymore. The system is actually protecting me for once instead of just processing paperwork while she found new ways to hurt us. That night I sit down at the kitchen table with a blank piece of notebook paper and start writing. Dr. Bray suggested this technique for processing anger when I'm not ready to confront the person directly. I write a letter to Mom that I never planned to send. I tell her exactly what her coercion cost me over 2 years, how her threats lived in my head every single day making me feel like a criminal for borrowing $20, how I had to watch her smile at Dad while texting Martin from our family dinner table, how she turned me into her accomplice and then tried to destroy me for finally telling the truth. I write about the scholarship money I lost, and the schools that rejected me and the panic attacks at 2 in the morning. I tell her I'm done carrying guilt for her choices. She cheated and stole and lied and blamed everyone else. I was 17 and scared and did what I thought would protect my siblings. I don't need her to understand or apologize or change. I just need her out of my head. When I finish writing 3 pages front and back, I take the letter to the kitchen sink. Burning it feels dramatic and weird, but also necessary. I watch the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. The smoke detector almost goes off and I have to wave a dish towel under it. But standing there watching my words disappear feels like I'm finally taking up space in my own life, instead of just existing in the corners Mom left for me. Miss Ray calls me into her office the next week with a suggestion that makes me want to argue immediately. She thinks I should sign up for an online ethics course before the college requires it. Show initiative and genuine interest and accountability instead of just doing the minimum to meet their conditions. I tell her it feels like admitting I actually did something wrong when the whole point is that Mom forced me into an impossible situation. Miss Ray leans back in her chair and waits until I finish talking. Then she explains this is exactly the boundary work Dr. Bray talks about in therapy. Taking responsibility for my small part, the 2 years of lying even under threat, while refusing to carry the weight of Mom's affair and embezzlement and sabotage. She says the colleges aren't asking me to accept blame for Mom's choices. They're asking me to show I understand the impact of my actions, even when those actions came from coercion. I sit there feeling angry and confused because it seems unfair that I have to prove anything when I was the victim. But I also know Miss Ray is trying to help me succeed in a system that doesn't care about fair. She's trying to give me tools to move forward. I tell her I'll think about it, and she prints out information for 3 different online ethics courses that would satisfy the college requirement. The scholarship committee's decision arrives in my email during lunch period at the school. I'm sitting in the cafeteria with my phone face down, trying not to check it every 30 seconds when it buzzes. The subject line makes my heart drop into my stomach. I open it right there with kids talking and laughing around me and read through the formal language twice to make sure I understand. They're awarding me a reduced scholarship of $8,000 per year instead of the original $15,000. The letter mentions concerning circumstances, but acknowledges the extraordinary duress I faced. It's not what I needed. It's not enough to cover everything. But it's something real instead of nothing at all. I forward it to Dad immediately and he calls me before the end of lunch period. I can hear him doing calculations in the background, probably pulling up loan information and cost breakdowns. He tells me if he gets the day job, we can make the numbers work. It won't be comfortable, but it's possible. We can do this. I eat my sandwich tasting nothing while trying to figure out if I feel relieved or disappointed or both. Dad gets the call about the job offer 3 days later while I'm at the school. He texts me a single sentence that just says, "I got it," with no other details. When I get home, he's sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out showing the salary and benefits package. He accepted on the spot during the phone call. No negotiating or asking for time to think. Just yes immediately because this job means normal hours and decent pay and health insurance that actually covers things. He came home that afternoon instead of leaving for an overnight shift, and it feels strange seeing him in the house during dinner time. We all sit together at the table for the first time in months. Danny talks about soccer practice. Rita colors on a placemat. Dad serves spaghetti and nobody mentions Mom or the anniversary party or any of the garbage that's been crushing us. Then Rita asks if this means we're normal again and the table goes quiet. Danny looks at Dad. Dad looks at me. I look at my plate. None of us know how to answer because normal died at that restaurant with 70 people watching. We're building something new that's not the before version of our family. But we're together and we're eating dinner and Dad isn't leaving for a warehouse shift in 2 hours. Maybe that's enough for now. The next 2 college decisions arrive in the same week, like the universe wanted to remind me not to get comfortable. The first email is short and direct. They appreciate my appeal and supporting documentation, but have decided not to move forward with my application. They wish me success in my future endeavors. That's it. No explanation beyond the standard language. Just no. The second email is longer and almost worse. They invite me to reapply next year after demonstrating sustained positive conduct. Like I'm on probation, same as mom. Like I need to prove I'm reformed before they'll consider letting me on campus. I'm down to 3 schools that haven't decided yet, and the conditional acceptance that's looking more realistic every day. I have to let go of the path I planned since freshman year, the dream school with the perfect program, and the campus I visited twice. The backup schools I thought were safe bets. All of it is gone or changed or conditional. My future looks nothing like what I imagined when I was filling out applications last fall. I sit at my desk staring at the acceptance letter from the third college with its ethics workshop requirement and clean conduct clause. This is what I have. This is what survived mom's sabotage and my own choices and everything that happened at that party. It's not the future I wanted, but it's a future that exists. I print out the acceptance letter and pin it to my wall next to the reduced scholarship notification. These are my anchors now. The proof that I'm moving forward even when the path is different from I planned. The state college registration office smells like old carpet and coffee. I fill out forms at a scratched desk while Missy Ray sits beside me with a color-coded spreadsheet showing which credits will transfer to 4-year schools. She circles the classes I need for my major and puts stars next to professors who write good recommendation letters. The advisor processing my paperwork barely looks up when she stamps my schedule and hands me a student ID card with a photo that makes me look exhausted. Miss Ray walks me through the transfer timeline on the way to my car. 2 semesters maintaining above a 3. 5, then reapply to my top choices with a clean record and distance from everything that happened. She makes it sound simple and possible instead of like settling for less. I drive home feeling like maybe this adjusted path is strategy instead of failure. Dad calls a family meeting that night and spreads papers across the kitchen table showing his new salary breakdown. He's written everything in neat columns with a blue pen. The mortgage payment, Danny and Rita's school costs, utilities, groceries, my reduced scholarship amount, the state college tuition. He adds it up 3 times to make sure before looking at us. We can keep the house. The kids' school is secure. My college is covered between the scholarship and in-state rates. It's tight, but it works. Danny asks if this means no more night shifts, and Dad nods, and I watch relief spread across his face like he's been holding his breath for months. Rita wants to know if we can get pizza sometimes, and Dad laughs for the first time in weeks. Watching him present actual solutions instead of just worry makes me realize how much the warehouse job was grinding him down. He looks 10 years younger sitting there with his budget spreadsheet. Dr. Abray's office has gray walls and a plant that's probably fake. I sit in the same chair I've been using for weeks, and she asks how I'm feeling about the college situation. I tell her I'm fine, and she waits in that therapist way that means she knows I'm lying. The anger comes out in pieces. Not the yelling kind, but the cold rage that sits in my chest when I think about my senior year, about having my future compromised because Mom decided to punish me for telling the truth. Dr. Bray writes something in her notebook and says, "Anger is appropriate here." She helps me make 2 lists on a whiteboard. Things I can control going forward. Things I need to grieve and let go. It's harder than I expected to figure out which column each thing belongs in. Some stuff like my transfer plan goes in the control column. Other stuff like the dream school I'll never attend goes in the grieve column. She says I'm allowed to be angry about what was stolen from me while still moving forward, and somehow that permission makes my chest feel less tight. A letter arrives from Martin's attorney 3 days later. The envelope has an official law firm logo and my name spelled correctly. Inside is 2 pages of careful legal language expressing Martin's remorse and offering to write a statement supporting my college appeals if it would help my case. I call Nolan before I finish reading. He tells me to bring the letter to his office and don't respond to anything. When I show him the pages, he reads them twice, then sets them down. Accepting anything from Martin muddies the narrative, he explains. It makes it look like I'm somehow connected to his crimes, or that I need his help to prove my innocence. The colleges need to see me as a victim of both Mom and Martin, not as someone working with Martin against Mom. I feel relieved having permission to refuse Martin's guilty conscience. Nolan drafts a polite decline on his firm's letterhead, and I sign it without reading the details. Curtis hosts a gathering at his house for Dad's birthday. Just Dad's side of the family shows up, because we deliberately didn't invite Mom's relatives who defended her after everything came out. The house is quiet and a little awkward with only 8 people instead of the usual crowd. Rita spent the morning decorating a cake with frosting letters that spell BESTDAD, but the letters are wobbly and the D looks more like an O. Curtis grills burgers in the backyard while Dad's other brother talks about a fishing trip they're planning. Nobody mentions Mom or the anniversary party or any of the garbage that split the family. When Rita brings out the cake, Dad stares at it for a long moment before his eyes get wet. We all pretend not to notice while he cuts slices with shaking hands. The gathering feels smaller than before, but also warmer, like we're building something new from what survived. Another letter comes through official legal channels from Mom's court-mandated counselor. The envelope has the county seal and takes me 3 tries to open because my hands won't stop shaking. Inside is 1 page of careful clinical language acknowledging that Mom has begun to express awareness of harm caused to family members in her therapy sessions. The wording is precise and distant. Never quite an apology, just an acknowledgement that harm occurred. I read it 3 times looking for genuine remorse hidden in the professional phrasing. The counselor writes that Mom is making progress in recognizing the impact of her actions on others. But there's no direct quote from Mom, no personal message, nothing that sounds like actual sorry. I fold the letter back into its envelope and realize I don't actually care if she's sorry anymore. I just need her to stop. The letter goes in a folder on my desk without me opening it again. Dr. Bray taught me this boundary technique in our last session. I'm allowed to not be ready for Mom's regret, or her excuses, or whatever else might be in that careful clinical language. The letter can sit in that folder until I decide what to do with it. If I ever decide. That choice belongs to me now instead of to her threats, or anyone's expectations about forgiveness and family healing. I leave the folder in my desk drawer and don't think about it for 3 days. My first day of college feels strange in how normal it is. I find my classrooms using the campus map, take notes in lectures about subjects I actually chose, eat lunch alone at a table near the library while reading the syllabus for my afternoon class. My hands shake a little walking across campus between buildings, but nobody stares or whispers or knows anything about my family's mess. The anonymity feels like the first deep breath I've taken in years. A guy in my math class asks to borrow a pencil, and I hand him one without my stomach dropping in panic. The professor doesn't know about Mom or Martin or the anniversary party. I'm just another student in the 3rd row taking notes. Missy Ray emails me 2 weeks into the semester, asking if I'd be willing to volunteer helping other seniors navigate their college applications. I stare at the message for 10 minutes before replying, yes, even though I surprise myself with the answer. The first student I help is a girl whose dad won't fill out financial aid forms because he's mad about her college choices. She sits in Missy Ray's office crying about how she can't afford tuition without the forms, and her dad says that's her problem. I tell her I understand, and walk her through the dependency override process. Being able to say I've been through something similar, and here's what worked, gives my experience a purpose beyond just surviving it. The Conditional Acceptance College sends confirmation in a thick envelope that arrives on a Tuesday. I open it standing in the kitchen with Dad watching. The letter says if I maintain a 3 to 5 GPA at state school, I can transfer as a junior with my scholarship renewed at the original $15,000 per year amount. It's a 2-year plan instead of the 4-year path I imagined when I was filling out applications last fall. But it's concrete and achievable and written in official language on college letterhead. I print out the letter and pin it to my wall next to the reduced scholarship notification and the state college acceptance. These are my anchors now, showing that forward is forward even when the path isn't straight. Dad's first paycheck from the new job arrives on a Friday, and he comes home early with this look on his face I haven't seen in over a year. He spreads out bills on the kitchen table and actually pays them all with money left over, then announces we're going out for pizza at the place we used to hit every month before everything fell apart. Danny orders his usual pepperoni and sausage without even looking at the menu, and Rita spills her soda within 5 minutes, and we all laugh instead of getting tense about it. For 2 hours, we're just a family eating dinner, and nobody mentions Mom or the trial or college applications. The ordinariness of it makes my chest ache with something that feels like relief, mixed with grief for all the normal moments we lost. Dad reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, and I realize we're learning how to be a family again, even with the massive hole where Mom used to sit. The probation office sends an update letter the following week, confirming Mom completed her mandated counseling requirement and submitted the letter acknowledging harm. I read it standing in the kitchen, and the language is careful and clinical, never quite an apology, but an acknowledgement that damage occurred. Nolan calls that evening to walk me through what it means, and I appreciate that he doesn't try selling me on reconciliation or healing I'm not ready for. He explains she's complying with legal requirements, which is different from actual change, and that distinction matters because it means I don't owe her anything just because she checked boxes for the court. The letter goes in my desk drawer with all the other documentation, and I don't think about it again for days. Dr. Bray and I spend the next therapy session talking about boundaries, and I finally admit I still check my phone expecting threats, even though Mom hasn't contacted me directly in months. She asks if I've considered blocking the number permanently, and I freeze because somehow that feels more final than everything else that happened. We talk through my fear that blocking her means I'm cruel or unforgiving, and Dr. Bray gently points out that protecting my peace isn't cruelty. She reminds me I can always unblock it later if I choose, but right now I need space to figure out who I am without her voice in my head threatening consequences. I pull out my phone right there in her office and block the number, and my hands shake, but I do it. The relief is immediate and surprising, and I realize I've been carrying tension in my shoulders for 2 years waiting for the next threat. 3 months into my first semester, my GPA hits 3.8, and I've connected with 2 professors who actually seem impressed by my work ethic and focus. My statistics professor pulls me aside after class to say she's writing an early recommendation letter for my transfer applications and asks if I have time to review her draft. I read it in her office, and she describes me as resilient and conscientious and intellectually curious, and seeing myself through her eyes makes me realize I'm building a new reputation based on who I actually am, instead of who Mom tried to destroy. The professor knows nothing about the anniversary party or the embezzlement or the college sabotage. To her, I'm just a student who shows up prepared and asks good questions and turns work in on time. That clean slate feels like the most valuable thing I've earned. The remaining colleges that never responded finally send their late rejections in a batch over one weekend. I open each email and barely register the formal language about competitive applicant pools and difficult decisions because I'm already settled into my current path and doing well. Missy Ray emails Monday morning to congratulate me on my grades and remind me that success isn't about the name on the degree. She writes that I'm proving I can thrive even when the path isn't perfect, and that matters more than any prestigious acceptance letter. I print her email and add it to the wall next to my other anchors, because on hard days, I need reminding that forward momentum counts regardless of the route. Curtis and Autumn show up at the house one evening and ask Dad to sit down because they have something to tell him. They've been quietly putting money aside for Danny and Rita's college funds without saying anything until it was established, wanting to make sure Mom's destruction doesn't reach the younger kids' futures. Dad cries again, and I watch from the kitchen doorway as Curtis hugs him and says, "Family shows up for each other." I realize we're learning to support each other in ways we never did before, not despite the trauma, but because of what it taught us about being present when it matters. Rita asks if this means she can go to any college she wants, and Autumn laughs and says, "Let's get through elementary school first," and the normalcy of planning for futures instead of just surviving the present feels like progress. I walk past the Marriott on my way to campus one morning, and instead of the usual tightness in my chest, I just feel tired. Tired of carrying the weight of that night and everything that came after. Tired of letting one building represent my family's destruction. I keep walking toward my statistics class and the study group I'm leading later, and the hotel fades behind me like scenery instead of a monument. The building is just bricks and windows and a parking lot, and what happened there doesn't define my entire life anymore. I'm late to class because I stopped to buy coffee, and the mundane reason for my tardiness feels like victory. My final paper for ethics class asks me to reflect on a time I faced a moral dilemma, and I write about the anniversary party with complete honesty. I describe my fear and my complicity, and my choice to speak truth despite knowing it would hurt everyone, including me. The professor gives me an A and writes in the margins that moral courage isn't the absence of fear, but action despite terror. I save that comment in a folder on my laptop because on hard days I need reminding that I did the right thing, even when it destroyed my family's facade and cost me the future I planned. The paper becomes another anchor showing that my experience has meaning beyond just surviving it, that speaking up mattered even when the cost was devastating.